Good afternoon, and welcome to Three Swords Gaming. So I decided that before I continued my Guild Wars 2 personal story playthrough, picking up with the new expansion here, uh, that I wanted to do a quick review of what the expansion has given us so far and what I thought about that. So I did that. I did a full video, and it turned out to be 56 minutes long, and it occurred to me that that is far, far too long for what I wanted to do. So instead, I'm going to redo that video. I'm going to try and keep it quite a bit shorter, which probably means that we're going to run over here to a little village and maybe stay put and try and talk through this stuff pretty quick instead of running around the world and talking as I go, because I think that contributed to the massive amount of time that I was spending talking about a variety of things. So let's talk about Janthir Wilds. Now, where I want to start is the fact that Janthir Wilds right now seems to be incredibly well received by a vast portion of the community. And I think that's fair. I think it's really good. After all, it's got great big bears and nice little houses, and at least on this map, largely feels like Animal Crossing that's been invaded by unwanted invaders. And people seem really receptive to that, and that's cool. However, I kind of also am a little bit concerned, and in part, this is why I'm making the video. A little bit concerned because Soda was also incredibly well received when it initially came out. People seemed really, really excited about Soto, and for good reason. I thought that early on in Soto, the story was good and the gameplay was pretty fun, and overall, it just felt like a good experience. And then it went south, and people seem to have forgotten that. That doesn't mean that Janthir Wild is going to be bad, but it does mean that maybe we should contain ourselves just a little bit when we're saying things like this is the best expansion that Guild Wars 2 has released, because we know what Heart of Thorns was, and Heart of Thorns was actually, in my opinion, the best expansion. It was tremendously good. We know what Path of Fire and End of Dragons were, and we don't know yet what this is actually going to be. We know what it is so far, and that's what I'm going to talk about. But I said I wasn't going to do events, didn't I? But I think we need to, be mindful of how things have gone in the past, and also be real honest about what Janthir Wilds is and is not, because I think some things are being overlooked right now because people are in the honeymoon phase or they're excited. And maybe aren't being 100% honest with themselves in terms of what it actually is. So let's start with the story. So the story I find to be pretty enjoyable. It is a bit slow because it's extremely dialogue heavy. It is a narrative-driven story, not an action-driven story, which sets it apart from some of the other expansions that we've had to date, or some of the other DLCs that we've had. For example, I thought that the story in Living World Season 3, Living World Season 4 was very bad. I did not consider it good story in the slightest. However, the gameplay was very good, and that's the redeeming quality of Living World Season 3, Living World Season 4. The first half of Icebrew Saga was excellent in both regards. Second half of Icebrew Saga was bad in both regards. That's kind of true of Soto as well. The first half of Soto was good in both regards. The second half of Soto was bad in both regards. Soto was essentially Icebrew Saga Part 2, in my opinion. Thus far, Janthir Wild seems to be off to a good start. It is extremely dependent on narrative to advance the story and make the story worthwhile. I'm okay with that. It does feel a bit slow at times, and so when I do the story playthrough, that's going to feel a bit slow at times as well, because that's just naturally how the story feels. But the narrative itself is pretty good, and is very lore heavy. So if you're into the lore, then that should feel really nice. It does have a weak spot, which is that it feels a bit confusing. There are certain things that are apparently tremendously important, particularly involving one character, which I don't want to spoil in this video, so I'm not going to go too in-depth into that, but there's a character that we are to understand is tremendously important, and we need to find them. We get this from another character, and I guess we're supposed to take that with a grain of salt, I think is the takeaway. But because the commander's dialogue seems to take it at face value, it's hard for us as the player to take it with a grain of salt when the player character seems not to. And that leads to, I think, some confusion for a lot of players. It definitely led to confusion for me, and I know the story pretty well. And I know the lore at least relatively well. So when I found myself confused, that was a little bit disappointing. Another minor complaint with the story is that they used Bram's voice actor for another character, and that's fine. I'm not the Bram hater that some people are. However, that character is very much like Bram in certain ways, and so you get a bizarre sense of deja vu from that. And I kind of wish that wasn't the case. But overall, story feels pretty good. I don't dislike it. The question is, can they continue to have a compelling, interesting story that doesn't feel rushed and doesn't feel poorly developed as they go forward through the next 3 releases? And that remains to be seen. There is a little hope in that they did not try to do an entire story arc in the release and a second story arc in the DLC or the updates. Instead, it looks like it's going to be one story arc throughout. I think that puts them in a better position to succeed. So let's talk about the maps. These maps are beautiful, and they're beautiful in very different ways. So let's head back over real quick. And I don't want this to take too much time because, again, I don't want to end up with another 56-minute video. But this kind of stuff, this map in general is very beautiful, and this kind of stuff really contributes to it. This is kind of a Scandinavian and Iceland themed expansion. In fact, I saw Iceland specifically cited when the studio was talking about some of their design influences. And I love that. Having been to Iceland as a tourist, I thought it was an extraordinary place. I thought it was super cool. The terrain there is absolutely amazing. We get that in the second map. So this first map, really beautiful. Also a lot of fun. It's very whimsical. Like I said, it's like Animal Crossing with invaders. And I think a lot of people have received that well. The second map, which we'll run to real quick, feels much more desolate. Janthir Century here. And I think it feels desolate by design, so I don't hold that against them. In fact, on the contrary, up here, let's hop on the Worklaw because the Worklaw is the mount of feature in this expansion. There is a particular area on this map that I absolutely love because it is deeply reminiscent of my experience in Iceland, which was a positive experience for me, but also was an area I found to be of extraordinary beauty. You get up here on this beach that runs along the eastern side of Janthir Century here, and this looks like portions of the southern coast in Iceland, and I absolutely love it. The black sand beach, the spires of stone, not so much the Titan bones or whatever kind of bones these are, but a lot of this other stuff here very much feels like that experience that I had, and I really, really appreciate it. I really enjoy it. The map does feel very foreboding, very desolate, very hostile. Like I said, I think that's by design, so I don't necessarily dislike it. It does make exploration a little bit more of a challenge, but I don't think that's a bad thing to be challenged as you explore the map and encounter enemies like this. People have talked about how they really appreciate, particularly on the first map, event density. There is a separate conversation that I'm not going to include in this video because it will greatly add to the time, but I may include in the story playthrough about how event density, the player's impact on that, is affected by power creep of mounts, and the fact that the faster you move through maps, the less likely you are to engage in events. And so as they've made mounts that traverse faster and faster and skip more and more stuff, like in this case of the Skyscale, the harder it is to feel event density in the first place. Certainly the event density on this map is much lower than the other map, but that's not necessarily tragic. It is notable in some areas, particularly right up here in like this corner of the map. It feels like there's very little going on. I think that's by design, but I have not 100% figured out what that design is. It's been suggested that they're going to add more. This has been a theory that I've heard cited by several like content creators. I don't think it's a terrible theory. It's one that I've wondered about myself, but I also don't see any evidence of that. I think that's just kind of, oh no, speculation. And while it might be relatively fair speculation, it is still speculation. It would be not unheard of for ArenaNet, but also not particularly common for them to do it that way versus, you know, focusing on the new maps. But we're not getting a new map until the 6-month patch, so maybe they will do more with this map at the 3-month patch. Overall, maps are pretty good. Definitely beautiful things to do. Before I leave on the map, I do have to mention the hearts. So they've added hearts again. I am generally a defender of hearts. I advocate hearts being on maps. However, I don't like it when the hearts are massively overtuned. I do feel like in this expansion they are overtuned. In particular, this one right down here is catastrophically bad because you can't really do anything in this area. So the area of the heart is only like this right here. That's exacerbated by the fact that there are no little things to do to advance the heart, only events. And the events are, they feel, with this heart in mind, relatively sparse. They probably wouldn't feel that way if you didn't have to have them for this heart, but because you need them for this heart, they feel sparse. What's more, you can see my advancement on the heart right there was from an entire event. So you can see you need like 6 of these events to complete the heart. Or it may depend from event to event, but that was an entire event. You can see I only advanced that heart about 1/6. That is further exacerbated by the fact that you need that heart at one point to advance in the story. So that is an exceptionally bad feeling when you struggle to advance a heart and you need it to move forward in the story, and it just feels like it's going nowhere. That heart gets a 0 out of 10 for me. Like, would not recommend. I think it's absolutely horrible. Might be one of the worst hearts in the game. And I think that's unfortunate. The hearts on the first map, however, the lowlands, what is it, something lowlands down here? Lowland Shore, those hearts are far more forgiving. And the other two on this map are better than that one. That one is just singularly stands as one of the most awful hearts I've ever seen. I've heard some other content creators and streamers and stuff kind of gloss over that and say, oh, this one was a little rough and, you know, kind of didn't feel good for a minute. No, it feels absolutely awful. It is just positively gross the way it was implemented. And is, I think, I find it to be kind of unforgivable. I don't think making excuses for ArenaNet in regards to that particular heart is the right thing to do, because something that's bad is something that's bad, no matter how much you like the person who did it. And that heart is just plain bad. Still, the maps aren't too shabby. So the mount. So they reinvigorated Skyscale with Secrets of the Obscure. With this expansion, they intended to reinvigorate Warclaw. As you can see, this is the skin for the new and improved Warclaw. It's pretty cool. I think they did a good job at making it. Certainly, it's a change from like the magically energized armor approach that the Warclaw has had up until this point. This is very clearly like an animal, like some sort of, you know, biological creature. And that kind of, in some ways, maybe feels better for a lot of people. I think maybe it feels better for me, so I kind of like that. But the more notable thing is the skills that they gave the Warclaw. So first of all, they made it possible to use all these skills that we generally associate with World vs. World out here in the open world. You can use the chain pull to impact, you know, the break bar. You can, you know, it's a combat mount. You can throw your little spears here at bad guys. It doesn't do a ton of damage, but presumably enough to participate in events, which I will talk about more in a moment. You can use this sniff skill to try and find treasure chests and identify enemies. You see there, I got nothing but a bunch of enemies. But if we use it long enough running around here, perhaps we will find a treasure chest. Not if I'm swimming, though. And so we can, you know, be excited to find whatever treasure, whatnot. The new Warclaw, that being this right here, I have I'm just one mastery short of completing the Warclaw here. And really, it's actually a mastery that relates to all mounts, not to the Warclaw specifically. It feels really good. It's a lot of fun. And that's a positive thing. However, what's not positive is that they continue to add combat skills to mounts, which allow people to bypass the natural gameplay of participating in events. That was egregiously bad with the Skyscale's Fireball. The number of events that you participate in where you just have some folks like lurking overhead, shooting fireballs, and not actually doing anything to really contribute, just doing enough damage to get participation. That was already such an awful problem. It must feel terrible for new players to encounter it, and I suspect that because it feels terrible when I encounter it, and I've been in this game since the beta. So, how horrible that must feel for a new player. The Warclaw is not going to be nearly as bad about that. The Spear does not do a whole lot of damage. More importantly, you remain on the ground, so you're in aggro range for the enemies. However, it still does put people in a position to, because the Warclaw, you can remount so quickly in combat, it does still put people in a position to some degree get participation in events while bypassing any of the combat associated with the event. I do have a problem with that. So I don't necessarily, I'm not kept up at night by the fact that mount power creep, so to speak, has relegated all the mounts except for Warclaw and Skyscale obsolete. It's fine. It is what it is. Like, if you really love your bunny, you're going to use your bunny whether it's the the mount of choice in that situation or not. So folks who, or more notably, like the folks who think Griffin or Beetle are like the best things ever, and they do like the races and stuff with them, I don't think that's going to change. But the more they add combat skills to these mounts, the worse the open world is going to get when it comes to people like using those skills to leech off of events and grief other players. And I foresee that becoming more and more of a problem as time passes, and I think that's unfortunate. So spears. We have spears now, and I'm running around with a spear right now on this here Necromancer, which was the Necromancer I created with my my new character slot that came with. I'm maxed on character slots, so I don't get a new one until a new expansion comes out. So I got a new character slot, created this Necromancer. I am not going to speak for the spears on every class because I have not played them on every class. Certainly not to the point where I'm super knowledgeable on them. In fact, the only one that I feel relatively comfortable saying I am even a little bit knowledgeable on is the Necromancer. So I'm not a spear master yet by any stretch of the imagination. But I will say, I think it was a good move for them to add the spears. They needed to add something. Until they add more elite specs, nothing will be new elite specs. But the spears give variety of gameplay. They seem to be, in many cases, pretty strong. Definitely strong enough to compete in the open world. This particular spear, the Necro Spear, has a lot of sustain with this skill right here that dumps a whole bunch of healing on you when you use it, or it's lifesteal is what it is. So I do like that. So overall, I think the spears are a win. I think people are enjoying them. I'm just going to pull all the little Titanlings over here. So I am pretty excited about that. I'm looking forward to continuing to get to know the spears better with all the classes, because I bounce around between characters pretty regularly. I do wonder what they're going to do in the future, because one day they're going to run out of ideas. And I don't know what I would love to see, but it wouldn't necessarily be received well by everyone, would be an expansion where they make all the armor classes accessible to all the characters. With the massive proliferation of outfits now, there's no longer an excuse to not do that. They can no longer say it's about PvP or World vs. World or whatever. And if they can add new weapons and they can do all these new things they're doing, certainly they can find a way to create the technology to do that. But I don't know how rewarding that would actually be for players who really long for like combat changes to incorporate into like instance content, getting aesthetic changes probably wouldn't be that pleasing for them. So I don't know that would be enough to move the needle on selling an expansion. All right, so the last thing, which I can't do right now while I'm in combat, so I need to hurry up and kill this dude, is homesteads. And I will say, I always wanted them to add housing in Guild Wars 2. I did not really realistically think they would ever do it. I held out some small hope, but it was largely copium, as the kids like to say. It I didn't think it was a realistic thing, and lo and behold, they did it. Now, I have heard a variety of different opinions on the Guild Wars 2 housing from the best in any MMO right now, which I think is a pretty gross exaggeration, to mediocre, and I don't think that's fair. It's probably somewhere in between those two things. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with it. So I think it looks beautiful. First of all, I think this is very lovely. It's may not be everyone's aesthetic, but we can talk more about that here in a second. I find it to be pretty nice. It's huge, and we'll run over here real quick to kind of talk about that. I said in the past, when talking about the possibility of player housing in Guild Wars 2, that they already had everything they needed because they could just give every individual player guild halls, and that they didn't even necessarily need to shrink the size of the playable space. Like, it's fine to give people giant housing areas. Even if you had told me, yeah, they're going to bring in housing, I would not have believed you if you had said, and it's going to be guild hall sized. And yet they have damn near done that. If you look at this map here, that is probably 2/3 of a guild hall in size. Really, really cool that they went that far, and it gives you huge opportunities. Like this island over here. So I've not done almost any decorating yet, but I'm looking forward to it, and I'm excited to see what I can do with that island because it's going to be like its own thing. That may be true of this island over here as well, if that's accessible. Maybe I'll kill that Tanuki. I haven't decided yet. But looking forward to doing lots of really cool, fun things with this space. And, actually, this may not be accessible. Not accessible. But really pleased with what they have given us here. Really blown away in terms of the scope of this. Now, one of the common complaints is that it is going to be quite expensive, and we'll run over here and take a look at that. I do think, yes, if you go ham on decorating your homestead, it is going to be somewhat expensive. But I think we really, since they started allowing people to just farm gold, if you will, in the Wizard's Vault here, 6 Astral Acclaim for gold is like really, really low. And you can get 90 every 3 months from that. That's never mind, the Mystic Coins. That's never mind these bags of coins, which are more expensive, but also don't have a limit. Some of the other stuff in here that you can flip into gold in different ways, including the laurels. You can get massive amounts of gold from the Wizard's Vault. So we needed a gold sink, and I'm pleased that it's here. I don't mind the cost of any of this stuff. Hey, burn those 8 corrupted lodestones. Like, nobody was doing anything with corrupted lodestones anyway, aside from the corrupted weapons. Like, build a Frost Legion machine, This thing, like, I don't even know where you get the Jin doubloon. Probably that one raid wing, I forget what wing it is, because I'm not a raider. Is it 7? I assume that's where you get it. They drop rare enough that they're going for 37 gold. Great. Like, burn your gold on that. I think it's awesome. Here's what I don't like about decorating the homestead. This one thing. I don't know what this tree looks like unless I craft it. And by the way, these have gone up in price considerably. Still under a gold. I think the other one, I think the palm one is over a gold right now. But I don't know if that's worth it or not because I don't know what this tree looks like. I can go to Drizzlewood and try and find one to get an idea, but I shouldn't have to do that. I don't know. Here's a great example. Lion statues. There's 3 different ones. There's the immense one, the normal one, and the distressed one. The only indicator I have of any of these 3 and whether or not I might want one or the other is the description and a tiny thumbnail. Unless I craft these, I don't know if I want them or not. I don't mind the gold sink, but I don't think that's very fair to force people to craft those things just to know what they look like. They really need a preview function. I think that's an egregious oversight on their part to not have that. I do like the flexibility they built in, so you can't make certain things go away. I can't make my workshop here go away. I can't make the house itself here go away, but almost everything in the house I can make go away if I want. So let's start decorating, and we're going to choose erase decorations. We're going to choose to erase a single decoration, and this rug, hey, make the rug go away. There we go. Make the chair go away. Make the table go away, and so forth. So almost all this stuff I can make go away, which I intend to do at some point when I have spare time. I'm going to clear the house out completely and completely redecorate it. I like that. And that includes the grasses out here. In fact, I already made there was a plot of grass over here that I already made go away, and you can do that with all this grass. So, and then you can replace it if you want. Like it just goes into your inventory. So I think there's a lot of flexibility here. Really cool. I like that you can hold alts here. See, I got one there, over here. These are just some of my heavy armor. Over here, you see these stairs over here? Light armor folks are over there. Across the little bridge here by this tree, right as we're going out these portals, which I'm going to discuss here in a minute. Here are my medium armor folks. Good times. I like that a lot. They don't do anything except stand here. Now I can make them follow me, which is kind of cool for like screenshots. I can bring them all to one place, and I can have them all in one place. But that's about it. They don't actually... All right, stop. Stay here. So now they're there. And so if I wanted some kind of screenshot or something with a bridge in the background, I've achieved that. But I can't have them... Like, it would be amazing if they were... If they had, like, idle animations where they did something besides stand... and if you grouped them, they had an idle animation that was like cooperative where they would talk to each other. Even that would be amazing. Never mind, imagine a world where I could bring one up here, tell it to stop, and next time I come back to my homestead, they're like working in the sawmill. Man, that would be wild. I think that's an unrealistic expectation, as cool as it would be. I do wish they did something besides stand, however. Alright. One other nice thing about the homestead that I wanted to cover before we leave the homestead. We got some portals here. I really like that, and I hope they add more over time. This means I don't have to carry my Wizard Tower scroll around, and in fact, I'm no longer carrying it. I used to have it up here, now I don't. I don't need a scroll for, Janthir, because this portal's here. I can go straight to Lion's Arch. Not applicable necessarily if you have something like the Mistlock Sanctuary, but love that they added those portals. Super welcome thing, and of course, you can also go right back to where you were. With click to leave the instance, it's going to take me right back to Janthir Sentry. So I think the housing is absolutely fantastic. So overall, what are my thoughts on this expansion? Overall, I think they did a pretty good job. I do. I think they did a pretty good job. I don't think it is quote-unquote best expansion to date. I think that's just kind of a little bit of getting caught in the moment. Hey, everyone's entitled to their opinion. If you genuinely believe that this is the best expansion they've made, more power to you. You know, if the housing alone is enough to get you to that point or something like that, then that's cool. And I'm genuinely like happy for you that you feel that way. However, I that feels like, man, like my big takeaway on this expansion is actually a big takeaway from Soto, which is and is equally applicable to Icebrew Saga. They have a tendency to start strong and then just absolutely fumble the football. They have started strong with Janthir Wilds, and probably if you are an enjoyer of housing, for housing alone, it's worth the 25 US dollars for the basic package on Janthir Wilds. I think probably that's true. However, I think people should be very mindful of the fact that this could feel very bad if the story goes south. This could feel very bad if the raid is buggy, or the convergence is buggy, or the fractal is bad. Then all the people who are just stark raving mad over this expansion right now are going to change their tune real fast, and everybody's going to feel really bad. Because sometimes the community tends to rely on those voices to set the morale for the community, whether that's right or wrong. Kind of tends to be the case. Um, and there are a couple of minor things that I would love to see them fix. In particular, like if they fix this heart and a couple of other odd little things, they would go a long way towards drastically improving this expansion before they get to the next content release. And I think they would really benefit from putting forth the effort to do that. So that's my 2 cents. I'm enjoying Janthir Wilds. I think a lot of folks will enjoy it if they give it a whirl. So if you haven't tried it yet, by all means, give it a whirl. I'm gonna die here. I bit off way more than I can chew with all these abogas. I think it's worth giving it a shot. But I would caution against believing that the subsequent releases are going to be something until you see them and you know what they are, because history has taught us better than that. All right, so having done this, I look forward to continuing my Guild Wars 2 personal story playthrough, which I will do here in the very near future, and get that started. I'm going to die right now, so I'm going to accept that. There's dignity in accepting your demise, and I'm going to get ready to do some story on the other account. Thank you for giving me the time. I hope if you get the chance to try this expansion out yourself that you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.